Hello and
Hello.
welcome to Age of Geek,
The
the
podcast.
podcast.
I can't help myself. I
I,
can't.
I feel like we have to. Like that's because it's what it is. We are a
I-
podcast.
exactly.
But yes, so yeah, I'm Marley and I've got here with me.
I'm Steph.
I'm Robert.
Yeah, it's just us three tonight. I'm so excited to talk about MPower.
Yeah, they kind
MPower?
of dropped this on
Yeah.
us without like giving. At least I never saw
Mm-mm.
advertisements for it.
Yes, on Disney Plus. And it's just like a little 4 episode featurette. Um, and I really enjoyed it overall. I thought it was a really good addition to the MCU, and even just kind of fun of some of the fun like behind the scenes things with Marvel. And also, of course, we should mention it was released on March 8th, which is International Women's Day. So
Isn't
that
it?
was no, it's the
I
8th.
think I think it's the 5th. I'm
I'm
pretty
pretty.
It's the eight. It's the
I'm
eighth.
Is
pretty
it?
sure.
Wow. Okay.
But yes, it's okay,
But part
Steph.
of National Women's Month or Women's History Month. So
There
Yes,
we
there is
go.
that.
yes. And so we thought it'd be a really good episode to talk about about these different episodes from Empower, as well as just about women in action films and different actresses and people that have been in those, and of course with Marvel, we have a lot to talk about, and especially with the comics. So I'm glad that we have Robert here with us so he can help us with some of the comic parts because he is a lot more well versed.
Well, I'm also not going to stick just to Marvel on some of these, just because there are a lot of other strong female protagonists that we should consider and would be great to bring to the audience. So
Absolutely.
here we go.
Yeah.
Since we are talking Marvel at the get-go, I do have to talk about it's the Oscars tonight, the night that we're recording, and it's just a damn shame that Angela Bassett lost Best Supporting Actress. But congrats to Jamie Lee Curtis.
Oh
But I
yeah.
was rooting for Angela Bassett from Black Panther because she's amazing.
Yeah, no, for sure. But even did you guys see Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yes,
Oh my
fantastic
gosh.
movie.
I haven't
Phenomenal
yet.
movie. Oh, Steph, you would love it.
I know. I need to watch
It's
it.
nothing like you think it would be. It's completely like ugh,
It's
but
hard. It's
it's
hard
so
to
good.
even think. It's like everything you think you might consider in it. It's like,
Yeah.
nope. Just put all that
Yeah.
aside
Yep.
and just enjoy it. It's a beautiful thing to
Yep.
watch unfold in front of you.
And Jamie Lee Curtis was a lot of fun in that. She did so good. So
And I love
yeah, yeah.
I love Michelle Yao. She was so great in like
Mhm,
Crazy Witch Asians, she did Crouching Tiger,
She
Hidden
mhm.
did.
Dragon. Yeah. So
Did she win Best Actress?
no, what
I
oh,
ha-
I don't think they've announced Best
have
Actress
they
yet.
not?
The
That's
Best
probably going to
Oh,
be
Actor and
later in the show.
Actress, yeah, are usually the last ones.
oh, okay. I
But
for the first time am like not watching the Oscars. Isn't that weird?
Wakanda Forever did win Best Costume Design, which
I
I think
did
is
see
very
that.
well deserved.
Yes, definitely. Do you have the name of that person?
Ruth Carter.
Ruth
There we go.
Carter. Thank you, Robert.
She's the second it's her second Oscar, and she's the first Black woman to ever win 2
Mhm.
Oscars, which is
Well, she's also
amazing.
the she's was also the first African American woman to win an Oscar for costume design as well, for when
Mhm.
she won it for the first Black Panther.
Oh, and in the first episode is about Wakanda for I mean Black Panther and Wakanda Forever. I mean,
The
and
women of Wakanda. Yeah.
yes, they talk a little bit about the costume design and the
Mhm.
representation that they have amongst, excuse me, all the women in it, from the different like African nations. And
Mhm.
that's really why I thought it was deserving of it. Like there is a lot of representation. It's really beautiful to see women with locks, women who are bald, women in different like clothing. Like they did a really good job. I loved Denai Griera in it, talked about how they went through like 5 or 6, a bunch of different tattoos on her head, that she
Mhm.
wanted to go through, before deciding on the last one. And she honestly, Blake and I met her a few years ago at FanX when she came for The Walking Dead.
Good
And
show.
she's just such a, like, she's so tough and so cool. I just really enjoy her as an actress.
I would love to meet her someday. Maybe when if and when she comes back to FanX, I'll have to try and meet her as well.
Or we could just try to get her on an Age of Geek podcast directly. Just throwing
Denied.
that out there.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Wasn't
just
Ruth
consider this
Harper?
our
Oh yes,
ask, not our
yes.
beg, our ask for if anybody out there has an in with Miss Guerrera, tell her we would love to have her on the podcast.
Oh,
Yes.
definitely. So, and wasn't Ruth Carter? Wasn't she in? She was in this episode of MPower, wasn't
Hmm.
she?
She
Yeah,
was.
I remember like because I was trying to pay attention to the names, like because obviously like the actresses, because we know their faces because they're in the movies and we know their names, they're a lot easier to recognize. But I really liked how they not only featured the actresses in each of these films, but they also showed the women behind the scenes, the executive producers, the costume designers, the makeup artists,
And then a couple
production,
of the
set
editors.
designers, editors, writers, like everybody,
Hmm.
every sort of role. I love that they included like the women who were on those as well instead of just looking at the actresses, because sure, we like that, we like seeing the behind, we like seeing the actresses like talking about their roles. I really did enjoy that part of it too, but it was also really awesome to see the other women that were involved in making the film.
That was definitely one of my biggest takeaway, how, there was such an emphasis on having crew members that were strong women and, have them be part of the process of creating these strong female protagonists, and hopefully in other film and movies as well. Like, it shouldn't just be like, we have a female lead, let's have women be part of it, because we know that that is not how the world works when it comes to men helping out on movies. So to, yeah, create this overall sense of equality, just like continuing to having a
Mhm.
diverse set of people in the background. So good job for Marvel for
Yeah.
starting that, like doing some of
Well,
that stuff.
and just having all those different voices, they talked about that a lot too, with how important it was to have all sorts of different voices at the table when it came to putting these films together. So that way it wasn't just one side or one group of people. It was a whole bunch of people coming to the table and offering up ideas and their insights and their intelligence, and making an amazing film or TV show or whatever, whichever part it was.
Well, one of the other things that I appreciated about, especially the Black Panther episode, was they talked about how the movie was Black Panther, but it was also about all of the women around him, his
Hmm.
mother, his sister, his general, the Dora,
Hmm.
Nakia, and how they all played very important roles independent of whatever he did. And in a lot of cases, informed some of what he did as as the movie progressed and as he went from being, just getting ready to be coronated to being the hero he was at the end of the movie. And I think that that speaks well to excuse me, to real life. I mean, women supporting men, and that's not just supporting them, but also being very important factors in being able to accomplish things that we do. And I think that the reflection of that, just showing that the leader of the military for Wakanda is a woman, and their lead spy and love interest, who basically is like, Wakanda has done all these wonderful things for Wakanda. Wakanda could do so much more, and called him out repeatedly on, we can do more. And I could stay here, but I wouldn't be happy. But and just Nakia's growth as well, and her character and her standing up to him is just like, I love you, but you're kind of dumb on this point. Or even Shuri, who was just like, the lead scientist for Wakanda at, let's call it, early 20s, and you know making all these advancements, understanding the traditions, but going, just because something has worked all this time doesn't mean that we can't make it better. And using
Right.
science to
Hmm.
using technology to inform her, um, moving the traditions forward, I think was really good.
Yeah, all the women in that movie, yeah, made the Black Panther who he was. And I love that they put these women, I mean, these women who are sisters, wives, mothers, but still have their own power in those roles as well.
Well, and we saw that continued on in Wakanda Forever,
Hmm.
especially given that Chadwick Boseman passed away, ugh, which still just is, it just makes that film, I think, even more incredible and impactful because, they kind of had to change the tune a little bit. And I really liked Wakanda Forever, like I feel like they really took what they could do with it, given the circumstances of losing their main actor. And they were able to show another side of Wakanda, and we were able to see it farther. And I mean, that movie was all about the women of Wakanda. And I loved seeing all those different aspects. We got a nice touch of them in the first movie, but then in the second movie, we got to see even more. And I think that's what made that film like really, really it was really good.
In the comics, does Shuri ever take on the mantle of Black Panther?
At least twice.
Okay. So it's
And
not like a pull from the comics. I know I'll have like people every once in a while that's like, I really liked, they'll talk to me about things and I have to, I don't know. That's like my clients. I don't want to overstep but they'll be like, yeah, I just didn't know if I like Shuri. And I'm like, oh, like you can have your opinion, but that isn't, or like it's no one was asking for stuff like that. I'm like, that's not, yeah. So
yeah.
I just have to
No,
kind of bite my tongue sometimes.
Shuri became the Black Panther the first time, I believe, in the I want to say it's the early '90s or early to mid '90s, during a run by I think it was Christopher Priest. I don't think it was the Reggie Hudlin run, but one of the two of them, and she became Black Panther then. There was a point in the not too distant past, like the past 5 or so years, where she kind of took on the role again. But then she was also imbued with other powers by the ancestors that she has retained and uses those to support her brother despite the problems he is currently going through in the comics, which is he's the Black Panther in exile, basically.
Hmm. I might have to pick up some Black Panther books.
The Ta-Nehisi Coates run was interesting, but they also expanded that to the Galactic Empire of Wakanda, which was set in the future, set thousands of years in the future. And then there was a time thing. It could get a little distorting, a little weird there. But the current run by John Ridley has seen Wakanda move to a constitutional monarchy, and a lot of people have found that things that T'Challa has done have not been great. So they've kind of been like, "So you're out. You were the king. You're just a guy in a suit now."
That's so interesting too. Not like knowing the prominence of like Chadwick Boseman, you kind of can't see him being like you just put him and T'Challa together.
Mhm.
So picturing him as someone's like didn't do the best things, you're just like, no, T'Challa, no.
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
One thing sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was going to move on. So if you had something else.
I was actually going to move on as well.
Okay. I was going to say one thing I actually really liked about the episodes is in like the last 10, 15 minutes, they brought in real people.
A fan.
Not that actresses aren't real people, but they brought in fans that talk about this character and why it's so impactful for them.
Mm-hmm. I loved that too.
And in the first Black Panther movie, they brought in this dad with his two girls, and they just talked about how amazing it is to see representation of people who look like them. And it just made me tear up like a little bit. I am emotional wreck on good days. I cried at songs the other day. Anyways, but it just really goes to show, and I've had this talk a lot with people, how representation is so important, how seeing women in roles, like it is really important. It's becoming more and more common, but it isn't always like, so to have these diverse, strong, differing people and not just two-dimensional characters is really impactful, especially for like our young daughters, people who haven't been represented. So I just thought that was really touching.
Oh, for sure. Well, and in the Captain Marvel episode, I really like that one a lot. Even though like Captain Marvel, like I mean, like, she's a fun character. Like, I enjoy her, but she's not like, high on my list necessarily. But I still really, there was a part in that episode that they talked about her friendship with Maria Rambeau, and how they they purposely for that movie didn't want to make any sort of male counterpart or like a love interest for Captain Marvel, because they wanted to show that, like, no, the love and like the friendship that she has for Maria is what she needs. That's all that she needs, is she just needed her friend. And they grew up like together, and they went to, they're fighter pilots together, and they're just these two women supporting each other as friends. And I think that was really important for them to point that out, and to show that, like, no, we didn't need to have like that love interest in that side of the story, or any like to show for Captain Marvel's relationships. And I think, again, just showing how, again, just like back to the fighter pilots, and how the women, especially during that time, because like I think that's supposed to be like what, the 90s.
95.
Yeah, and so it just, they weren't as, I don't know, popular, or there just weren't as many, or whatever. It was kind of taboo a little bit for women to be like part of the military. It's definitely changed nowadays.
Well, to specifically in this episode, for the movie to be set in 95, they had the first female fighter pilot. They interviewed her in the episode as well, who's now a general in the Air Force.
Yeah.
But she became the first female combat fighter pilot in 1993
Mm,
in the Air Force. So it wasn't just that it was taboo; it was just like it wasn't even a thing.
yeah.
So by the time in movie time, by the time that Carol comes back to Earth, there had only been a handful of
Hmm.
female combat fighter pilots at that point. Before then, it had just been um, non-combat missions and test pilots, and that's
Yeah.
it. So
Oh
getting to
yeah.
see Carol as a test pilot was good. The fact that they actually had her in a plane and showed her, that she was capable, if not more than capable, of handling herself in a fighter plane or in a test plane. But having, as you mentioned, the relationship with Monica as a loving friend, um, and who was also in the same combat or the fighter wing with her.
Hmm.
I think that having them have that shared experience was also good to see that, and they were supportive of each other in that, even when Carol was off being Carol,
Hmm.
uh, before she ever became Veers in
Yeah.
that movie.
Well, and they even mentioned in the episode that after Captain Marvel came out, what year was that? Was that 2018,
2018.
19, 18? That in real life, female enrollment in the Air Force increased by like 50%
That's
after
pretty
seeing
cool.
that movie. And I think that's awesome, because I could never be in the military. Like, I commend anyone who joins the military, because that would be really, really hard, and especially for, I think it's especially for women. It's not easy.
I just looked it up, and this is a 2022 poll. I don't record, but female combat pilots 2% and 98% male. In 2022 is the statistic, and then pilots for like domestic flights, 71% male, 29% female.
Oh wow.
So still a big difference in the demographic.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think and we talk about this in our episode, our Cutscenes and Cupcakes episode on Horizon Forbidden West, about how there's, for Aloy, who saves the universe for the second time at least, there's a few different love interests that you could go towards, but they specifically chose not to have her have a love interest, because it's more important to show the friendship that she grows and the family that she gets to choose herself, and the importance of those relationships. And I mean, obviously romance and love, like that type of love, is important, but I feel like we're showing different types of families, different types of people, and that is super important as well. So
Definitely. Yeah. Anything else about the Captain Marvel episode, or should we talk about Wanda?
Let's talk Wanda.
Let's talk Wanda. I want to just right off the bat, I really liked this episode too because I mean I liked all of them, I'll be honest, but I liked it because they went into quite a lot of detail actually talking about WandaVision and how the writers and everybody who was involved with making that TV show and how they decided to make it because they wanted to show a side of Wanda, like they wanted to show who she really is. And so we got to see her, like, sure, she was in the middle of the grief process, which is how they like did each of the episodes. They like went through the entire grief process, but like they wanted to show like that this woman, even though she has such great power, she also has feelings. She is hurt, she feels loss, and just being able to see her as a woman figure things out, even though she might not have done it in the best way by holding an entire town captive, but but it was still like good to like it was important to see that side of her.
I think it was Elizabeth Olsen. It might have been Catherine Hahn who says, like, close to the end of the episode, that this could have been a story about female hysteria, and instead they changed it into like a mental health story.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. I really like that because, I mean, hysteria back in the day was a thing that people got hospitalized for, that they got lobotomized for, they got shocked. So like it was a big thing, and it's all on this like mantle of mental health, and people will just talk about the emotional women, hysterical women, women who are too loud and or talk like, and instead and not look at it as a journey through figuring out where your mental health is. So I don't know. I really like that because yeah, she did things that were not right, that were controversial, but she was suffering. Not that that makes it okay, and everyone has a journey to go through. And of course, it was phase 4, and that's just the depression stage.
Well, and she was the start of it. She was the start of phase 4. So we got hit right off the bat with like, hey, here is a character that you know from previous films, and now we're seeing this, like I said just a second ago, like we're seeing now this side of her, and we're seeing her go through her struggles and in a more like a closer light, and then into this woman who we see, even later on in Multiverse of Madness, which I still feel like that movie, Multiverse of Madness, is a totally different subject, I feel like, but I struggle with that one a little bit because I feel like they did like kind of had her go off. I feel like they kind of had her go off the rails a little bit because she did learn and grow a lot from WandaVision. And then all of a sudden she's like completely
back at
different.
ground zero.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's just kind of my observation. I might be wrong, but
well, I'm going to
hard.
apologize first for not having seen the Scarlet Witch episode of MPower, but I thought that it was a fascinating choice, and maybe they talked about this in the episode, how they chose to convey something as strong and powerful as grief and going through the different stages of grief through comedy, which in and of itself would have been difficult, but then to go through 7 different forms of comedic interpretation and go through not just her grief, but then every episode changing how they're portraying that grief through comedy.
Yeah.
Going from like the 50s and then moving it forward to, like Modern Family style humor and kind of situational comedy. That was a very bold choice to start with and could have been very dangerous because it could have gone from a comedic telling of how she's dealing with her grief to satire or even just caricature. And they did a very good job of maintaining a solid through line with it being comedic on the edges, I think.
And here's where I admit that I've never watched WandaVision.
Oh my!
I know. I feel like I have like I feel I will. I don't know if I'll eventually watch it. I was about to say I will, but who knows? But I feel like I know the story, especially after watching Multiverse of Madness. I some of it, and then watching this, I have a gist. I have a gist of it.
A gist.
But you don't get to see the journey, and it's really watching her make the journey through her grief every episode, because it was like, but like as we kind of thought at the end of Endgame, she was at one place, and then we discover she is not there, and her journey to get to, as Marley said, okay by the end of WandaVision, and then off the rails again at the beginning of Multiverse of Madness. I don't think that that's necessarily. I don't think they handled that incorrectly. I think that was part of her exposure to the Darkhold.
I was actually just going to bring that up, so thank you for bringing
Sure.
that up.
And I think that it was basically she now has the power to change everything and to fix everything, because she realizes her world has literally been shattered because she has lost, over the course of, at that point, well, 5 years, her brother, her de facto, I guess, common law husband for all intents and purposes, and then to hear the voices of children that she never had, but they're calling out to her as mom. And unfortunately, Ty isn't here to go into the whole Mephisto aspect of that, because that's an entirely different kettle of fish.
Oh my gosh!
But I think that after the time that she spent with the Darkhold and learning its secrets and realizing the power and what she can do, and there's basically nobody that can really stop her from doing what she wants to do. And I think that it's going from acting out of ego to straight id. I have an impulse, I can act on it, and I'm going to act on it, and there's nothing you can do about it
and
to
no one
stop
can
me.
stop me.
Yeah. And so I think that despite her seeming to get through her grief at the end of WandaVision, we saw, what we'll see on like commercials is I put on the happy face so that nobody sees how depressed I am, and just walk away. And she seemed to get away scot-free for holding a town hostage for however long she was there.
Right.
But, we realize she has created this perfect little bubble for herself that nobody can get to her unless she allows it. Nobody can find her unless she allows it. And she makes a perfect place for her to kind of come to terms with things while she's figuring out, how can I fix this? Fix in quotes, but how can I make it better for me? And not really worry about what anybody else thinks or does.
Well, I mean, we've been praising Marvel a lot. I will say that I think one of the biggest reasons I haven't wanted to watch WandaVision is I hate the trope of older men with much younger women. And I know that there's a whole thing with Vision not being human, whatever. But there's a 20-year difference, 17-year difference between Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen. And I think that's a trope that we get stuck into all the time, and we don't necessarily see the reciprocal of it unless it's mocking that or making it about cougars. And it's a trope that I feel really needs to die. So I need to get over myself and just watch it, accept that the world isn't perfect. And I love Paul Bettany. He's a great actor. Elizabeth Olsen has shown her acting chops. Oh, like she's great. But
I think you'd appreciate her acting chops in WandaVision.
For
just
sure.
how she comports herself in each of those scenarios.
Decades. Yeah, for sure. And Catherine Hahn too.
Definitely.
I've always enjoyed her in movies too. I think she is great.
Catherine Hahn's lovely. Yeah.
I'm excited to see her in the Agatha Harkness show. Show, not movie. I keep getting them mixed up. But either way, yeah, no, that one was really good too. So then the last one, Gamora, I feel like this is the one that I teared up while watching, and that's because like I liked hearing like Zoe Saldana and well, I mean they did it throughout each of the episodes really, but they would each of the main actresses, they would share kind of a little bit about their upbringing and what brought them to acting, as well as like being able to like kind of get into the role that they were able to portray in these Marvel shows. But I don't know. Each of them, like they were just like I found that they were really touching, and I really liked you know, each of them and hearing where they came from, as well as being able to have someone to look up to. And kind of backing up, sorry, I forgot, in Captain Marvel they showed
Iman Vellani.
Iman Vellani, thank you. I'm like,
Mhm.
she's the girl who played Ms. Marvel, which that is a good one too. If you haven't watched that one, Steph, you need to watch that one
I
as
have
well.
not watched that one yet.
But it's that one was really fun because, like, again, you see these, you know, these young girls, and like they are just looking for someone, a superhero to look up to and to be able to relate with. And I really enjoyed hearing each of the actresses talk about how they could see, like, as they were making the films and learning more about these characters, they could see themselves in them and could relate to them, and it just made the experience even that much more impactful for them.
I had a bone to pick with this episode. Um,
Let's hear it.
Karen Gillan was talking about Nebula, talking about the
Mm.
depth of her character, talking about how she just wanted to have a sister and how she was destroyed. And it was really, and then she's like, and I just don't think that's something that's explored in superhero characters very much, or something to that effect. And like, come on, Karen Gillan, like, we are talking, like, there's a lot of superhero characters with depth. It just kind of went to show that maybe she doesn't know the material as well, or she just relates to her character, which is fine. But I'm just like, that, I don't think that's true. So that was my little bone. Although I did think she was charming, and the rest, everything else she said, she was super cute and super charming.
Mm-hmm.
I love how they pointed out that she's a super different person than the character that she plays.
Oh yeah, totally. Well, and I liked how she talked about how Zoe Saldana like helped her, especially given Zoe's background in dance,
Yeah.
and how she was able to really, like, the fight scenes were a lot easier for her, and so she like kind of mentored and helped Karen Gillan like get to that point. And again, it's you're seeing females helping females, and I think that's like that's awesome to see that, like, she wanted to see her succeed in the film as well.
The point that I teared up a little bit was little Gamora. I don't know her name off the top of my head.
Yeah. Oh yes.
She was talking, and she's like, I came on set and I saw Zoe, and she was intimidating and demanding and powerful. And I'm not going to cry now, although I'm thinking about it. And she's just like, and I'm like that too. And it just made me so happy that she could
Mm-hmm.
own those characteristics that normally young girls like aren't supposed to. They're not supposed to be powerful or intimidating. But this girl who was 8 years old when she started this character was just like, that's me and that's who I want to be. And it was
Mm-hmm.
very cute.
And plus how she added to that, like, Zoe like came over to her and was like, you know, so excited and like loving and kind and like happy to have her there, and like just was so welcoming, you know. So
Ariana Greenblatt.
There we
ah,
go.
yes.
She's adorable. So, and it was at the end too, they had a woman who was, and I don't think she was born without an arm, so she's not an amputee
Oh.
that way. What they called it, limb difference or something like that. And she talked about Nebula and her
Mm-hmm.
body and her like bionic body, and how that was so empowering to her, having a prosthetic, and to see a superhero who at one point even cuts off her own hand so that she can do what she needs to do. And that was really,
Mm-hmm.
it was really cool.
Yeah. No, I liked, again, like, I really liked seeing these quote unquote real people, these fans, talk about how these characters impacted them and helped inspire them.
And I don't think I realized, like, I think I knew Zoe Saldana was badass, but I don't think I really realized how she's the lead in Avatar, which is one of the biggest selling
Franchises.
movies, yeah,
Mhm.
franchises of all time. She's done a lot of sci-fi and action in her life. Gamora is definitely not her only claim to fame.
Well, and I there was a note that I had made I wanted to make sure I remembered to bring up. I really liked how Zoe Saldana, in regards to her different roles as in different like action films and, you know, leading roles like that. For her, she's like, I wasn't playing the girlfriend anymore, because in a lot of her previous films, she was just the girlfriend,
Mhm.
you know, just someone on the side essentially. And so she's like, no, and like, so finally I'm playing a woman, I'm playing a strong, powerful woman and someone, in various films who can fight and who can do things and take care of herself. And so I liked hearing her say that.
Well, to keep it with Zoe Saldana, but to move it to shift it a little bit to a different franchise. Even she did a movie about 10 or 15 years ago for DC called The Losers, where she was let's just kind of go mercenary. And she did wind up being the girlfriend of one of the other characters, but she was also very um, independent in her own right and was very um, self-assured of what she could and couldn't do, and she had her own agenda that became apparent later in the movie. But not only that, but if you look at her in Star Trek, even Uhura didn't have the biggest role in the first Star Trek movie. In Into Darkness, not much again. But by the time they got to Star Trek Beyond, the third movie, her skills as a xenolinguist came to play in making in understanding what had happened to Captain Edison's crew, um, and their disappearance and resolving that. And yes, she did. She was Spock's significant other in that timeline, but she was able to stand alone and stand up on her own, and she worked beautifully independently of anyone else. And I was wrong. She did have something in the first movie where she was able to translate a dialect of Klingon that wound up getting the crew of the Enterprise aware of the Narada and its attack on Vulcan. Sorry, I'll stop nerding now.
No, you're fine. I was going to go into just, I think like the first TV show that I ever saw, not that I ever saw, but that was most impactful to me as far as like a strong female lead, was Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And she's in high school, so there is a lot to do with romance. I mean, Angel is a huge part of the entire franchise, and it's his girlfriend or her boyfriend. Um, and I won't go into how it's Joss Whedon who made that, but just to see this badass woman, she was a girl, she was in high school, she had a lot of things on her mind, but she had to kill like it was just a really cool thing to see someone so strong but also so relatable. And I still love Buffy, is such chef's kiss. Sarah Michelle Gellar is wonderful and played the role so well. Um,
Well,
I
should we move out of Marvel to just kind of broaden it a little bit
yeah, I
out
guess
of
I
the
just
Marvel
threw
movies?
my rando
Let's
out
do
there.
No,
it.
no, no,
Yeah.
and that's great. I mean, let's look at somebody who's been around in media for, at this point, 40 something years, and look at Ripley from the Alien series.
Mm,
And she's the flight control officer the first time we meet her, and she's not the lead of the movies per se, but she becomes you know the last person standing basically, and then leads the rest of the franchise after that. And we see her go from being kind of like, you're a junior officer on the ship, to the sole survivor, to somebody that we're going to bring in as a consultant because we don't trust you. We've counted up how much your actions cost us, and it's a lot. So we're not going to put you in jail, but we're not going to do you any favors either. And how she has to overcome situation after situation, not just with her job, not just with the people that she has to interact with, generally speaking, but just rising above that each time to do what needs to be done and save the day. And especially in the third movie, where she's on the penal colony with nothing but guys, and they're like, well, we can handle this. And she's like, you have no idea what you're about to face. I can tell you. And they're just kind of like, no, 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 you just go over there and stay in your cell and blah blah blah. And she's like, all right, I'm going to be over here doing something else while you're doing that, and all dying because I know it's about to happen and it's not good. And even in the fourth movie, where it's a clone of that Ripley, the fact that she's wary of everything and everyone, but still the most capable person on the entire starship. You're just like, maybe at some point somebody would actually listen to, hey, you fought these before. We should actually listen to what you're telling us because you understand it. But Ripley was
No,
a great
she's just an
character.
emotional woman.
She's just an emotional woman. She's got to go and save the kid from the boogeyman in the second movie. But and I think that when she at the end of the movie when she's going back to save Newt from the mother the queen, and she's arming up for it, and it's everybody's like, oh, she's getting it. She's like, no, she's going tactical because she realizes she's got to be able to move quickly. She's taking what she needs for as precision a strike on. I'm going in, I'm getting out with the kid, and she's just doing everything that she can to survive. And she's like, nobody else is going to be able to do this. I've got to do it. Here we go.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't flinch from doing it. Didn't like having to do it. I mean, she was like, I don't want to go back out there because I know what's out there and I don't like it. It's evil and scary, and we'll all die. And it's funny because I watched, Aliens is one of my favorite rewatches, and I keep thinking, how short would this movie have been if they'd been like, so Ripley, you fought these before. Before we hit the ground, what do we need to do? And she goes, da 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 da. And it's like, well, that's a 30-minute movie right there, and we're out. And we don't get all of the scenes of her having to tell the senior military person, you always were an asshole, Gorman, and just take charge from him because he's like, I am checked out completely at this point. I cannot. I don't know what to do here. And her showing her leadership potential when she's like, okay, well, we're going to do this. You need to make sure that these things happen, and just doing everything there. And I think that Ripley is a great role model for proving be be assertive with your power, be strong in your ability. You don't have to depend on somebody to tell you what you can or can't do, or what is the wrong or the right way to do something, because it's their way to do it. Stand up for yourself, and she did that through all four of the movies. Whether anybody listened to her was an entirely different thing, but she was like, no, this is what we need to do. And again, had anybody listened to her, it would be like a 4 hour, 4 show miniseries, not a 4 movie
Not a
franchise.
poor movie.
So I think that that was really good. Um, Looking at another character, and this one, I can see where some people could see this as problematic, but bear with me here. Lara Croft.
Hmm.
Now I realize that she
Yep.
she she started as cheesecake for a lot of people with the, well, look, those polygons look wrong. No, these are guys who program this game. But the character, if you can get past the visual, the character is very independent, very strong, very self-assured, and doesn't need to wait for anybody's permission to do anything.
Yeah, she's a play on the female Indiana Jones type
Yeah,
character. And I
yeah.
think she pulled it off really well. I love Laura Croft. There's definitely some like male gazy stuff going on with it, but we kind of can't escape that. Except I will throw out as a counterpart to the male gaze thing, the Birds of Prey movie, which I know wasn't the best movie,
It,
although
it
I
was a
loved
great
it.
movie.
And the music is so good. I listen to that album still. It's so good. But I think it's in the Birds of Prey movie where Harley Quinn cuts off her hair, because that's one of my biggest things, especially superhero action movies, when these girls are running around in push-up bras, first of all, like no support, and then hair down everywhere, and you're just like, anti heels, like this is not conducive to fighting crime. Stop this. So yeah, no, Lara Croft is a great example. I mean, nobody's going to be perfect. Um, and the games are fun.
Mhm.
Well, and I even remember like when the Angelina Jolie movies came out, and that was my first introduction to
Mine
Lara
too.
Croft, because I didn't know that there was like video games of her. Maybe I heard at some point, but I don't remember. But either way, like I do remember seeing that first movie, and like, yeah, it's not the best movie as far as
But it was
quality goes,
fun.
but I thought it was fun, exactly. And it was cool to see a woman playing that kind of role as well. And so even like when the second movie came out with Angelina Jolie, like I enjoyed that one as well.
Angelina Jolie seems to walk that line really well of being like sex symbol, but also action star. I think she does that in like Mr. and Mrs. Smith. She plays that role really well as well.
Yeah.
And then wasn't she in the movie with James McAvoy where they're both spies? Which was
Which one is that?
I can't think of the name,
The
but
Tourist.
it is yes.
The Tourist. No.
No.
I'm not.
No.
Hey,
She
look to the
was in
bat
the
web.
Tourist. She was in the Tourist though, wasn't she?
I don't think I've seen the Taurus.
The Tourist. Oh no, that's with Johnny Depp. The Tourist is Angelina Jolie and Johnny Depp.
Wanted.
That one was a good one.
Yes.
Wanted.
Oh, yeah.
Really good. I remember my husband drugged me to see Mad Max Fury Road, and I was like, this looks dumb. And being blown away by Charlize Theron in it.
Furiosa. Yeah.
Oh, Furiosa is just one of the coolest characters that has ever been written for women. Her whole job is to save these, they're sex slaves who are having children for this gross man. And she doesn't care who she has to kill to do her job. I haven't seen any of the OG Fury Roads. I've just seen, and I've been so sad that they haven't made any more. Like, because haven't they talked about doing sequels with
They did.
Not with Charlize, with the male protagonist.
Bane. Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy.
There we go.
It looks like Furiosa is scheduled for next year, starring Anya Taylor-Joy.
Okay, I like Anya Taylor-Joy.
Okay, I could see that.
And it's just called Furiosa at this point.
I'm okay with that. Furiosa is a great character.
You know, there's three ladies that speaking of women who've played in movies who can be sexy and action stars. I from a young age was always excited about Charlie's Angels.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they're not, it's kind of quirky, it's fun, and all that. But again, I especially like Drew Barrymore. Like growing up, she was one of my favorite actresses. I loved seeing her in anything. And so when she played in the Charlie's Angels movies with Cameron Diaz and Lucy Liu, I was like, this is amazing. I love this team up. And I loved those films because it was fun to see again, because that's the whole thing about them, right? Those spies is that they're supposed to be, sexy and suave and try to, infiltrate into these organizations and be spies and all that. But then also at the same time, they can kick butt. And I always enjoyed those movies, even when the next iterations came out as well. I watched those, but they're so, oh my gosh. I don't know if I liked it as much.
The new Charlie's Angels movie, though, actually made me think I like Kristen Stewart more than I did from before. And again, I really liked, I think in the movie, she is supposed to be a queer character, but she still uses her sexuality and her, that part of herself to get what she wants and get it, girl, use that.
Yeah, for sure.
Here for it.
Yes, I know. It's always, I always was drawn to those action films that showed women being spies. Because again, you saw these two different sides of them, and you could see that that again, even in action films, women can have range, they can do a lot.
I think a TV show that exemplifies that and is one of my favorite shows is Game of Thrones. I get teased a lot because Cersei is my favorite character. But to have this not mentally stable woman, to be quite frank, her only cause is to take care of her children, and then her children all slowly die. And then she just loses it, and she doesn't care what she has to do to get the throne. She doesn't care what she has to do to get her children on the throne, and then she doesn't care what she has to do to get on the throne herself. And you see glimpses of humanity in her throughout the show. She's kind to Sansa, knowing that her son, what's his name? The evil, awful one.
Like totally forgetting all sorts of
She
names.
knows that she's pretty much being abused by him, and she's like, you just have to fight through it. And you see glimpses of humanity, but she is a horrible character. But I just love, and Lena Headey plays her
Joffrey.
Joffrey. Lena Headey plays her brilliantly. She's
Mm-hmm.
gorgeous. Brienne of Tarth, Gwendolyn Christie has to be one of my favorite actresses of right now. She's gorgeous. She's tall. She doesn't necessarily have that womanly body type, and she's like owning herself, and it's something we all want to see.
Well,
I guess I
especially seeing her in Wednesday, like
yeah.
she did phenomenal in that.
Well, one of the things, speaking of Wednesday, this is the perfect lead in for that. She did an interview, I believe, in Variety, right after Wednesday came out, saying that the costumers and the designers for that series, for her character, for the headmaster, she said that was the first time that she had felt pretty in a role. I'm just kind of like, wow. That's the,
Hmm.
that's kind of something to think of, because you think of her in Game of Thrones, or you think of her
Mhm.
in even the Star Wars sequel trilogy. It's like, yeah, I can see why she doesn't have a lot to do there, but
Yeah.
the fact that she's like, this is the first time I felt pretty, it's like that's saying something. But her character, even in Wednesday, was very strong as the headmaster, and I had questions about her going into the series, just like, there's something not right about you. You're keeping a few things just too secret, and came to just appreciate her character
Mhm.
as the season went on.
I think they said they modeled her character style after Tippi Hedren from The Birds,
Okay, I could see
um,
that.
which is really interesting because that's not her, like, body type or style at all, but just the whole beauty glamour part of it. Like,
Hmm.
I I really can appreciate that they did that for her, and that's something that she's able to experience. I love that. And
Indeed.
then I named my daughter Arya after Arya Stark, so, I don't think I have to tell you how I feel about that character. And when she kills the Night King, I named her before the finale, and so I'm like, "Oh gosh, there's still a chance she could go bad or something bad." And then she kills the Night King. Yes, I did not do wrong.
Well, if you're going to go into people we've named our daughters after, my oldest daughter, is named after a certain Themysciran princess. So
Hey.
if we're going to talk other strong female
Oh,
protagonists, here's one that we can't leave out either: Wonder Woman. And
yes.
I
Oh, for
think that
sure.
I think that we actually have two things that I want to make sure I say about this. One, the first movie, directed by Patty Jenkins, showed um, a woman who was unaware of many things in man's world, was kind of thrown into it and learned a lot on the fly. But I loved the way that they shot this movie. It had sensibility that a male director would not have had. And I know this looking at the Diana and Victor Stone scene in Justice League. So if you look at how Wonder Woman was shot, it was shot, these are women who are wearing, a lot of skirts, a lot of short pants outfits on Themyscira, and everything was, you know, everything was shot in a tasteful manner, for lack of a better way of putting it. There's a scene in Justice League where Diana goes to confront Victor and like, we need your help, and the one of the first shots you get is an upshot from behind her that has her in the foreground and her backside camera front, and then Victor back here, and I'm just kind of like, that was completely unnecessary. It added nothing to it, and then you find out, I believe Zack Snyder shot that scene. You're just like, oh, okay, that makes
That makes sense.
sense.
That
Well, and
tracks.
when, I don't think has Themyscira ever really been in film the way that it was in Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman?
No,
And
and
then
even in the second movie, it
And
wasn't
then
the
to
same.
find out that most of those women were Olympians, real athletes,
Hmm.
and so they had different body types. They had strong, fierce women. They had smaller women who are so muscular and strong, and they had like bulky women who are like power. So they had different body types across the board. And then Robin Wright's character is just the epitome of like strong, powerful woman. I was blown away by Robin Wright, and she doesn't even have a huge role in the first Wonder Woman.
But her role is I think it's understated because Diana isn't trying to live up to her mother's example. She's trying to live up to her aunt's example.
Yeah.
So you do get that from Robin Wright's character because the tiara that Diana wears isn't representative of the crown of Themyscira. It's Antiope's crown.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So I mean, they're similar, but it was her aunt's tiara basically. So that's another thing. But also you're asking about it was Themyscira shown like that in the movies. So we get the Wonder Woman movie and we get the Justice League movie, and look at the differences in costuming for the Themyscirans in the first Wonder Woman movie and in Justice League when they're doing the giant battle scene with the Atlanteans and everybody as Darkseid and Steppenwolf have come to Earth, and they're in bikinis and bare
Mhm.
midriff outfits. And it's kind of like we can see that thought
It was
was given to this by a
made by
guy,
men.
and it's just like we proved in the first movie that they can wear these outfits and battle armor and be covered like you would want to be in battle, as opposed to, hey, look, I got a giant target right here.
Right.
Shoot here. And it's just
Well,
like, really, guys? That's your big move?
I thought it was interesting actually in MPower when they were talking about the
Mm-hmm.
Dora
Milaje.
Milaje. I can never say,
Yeah.
but Lupita Nyong'o actually is the one who's like in the comics they have more of a relationship with Black Panther as she used the term pimps and hoes.
And she
Um,
was 100% correct
yeah,
originally.
and you can see how these female characters, female strong empowered characters written by men, they're like on this right path. They you can see that they have like a vision, something that they want to portray, but then they portray it in this way. They portray the Amazonian women scantily clad, which is and you
Well,
just
and
it's just
it's
a little heartbreaking. You're like, I know you want
yeah.
to do good things, but come on.
Well, and it's the practicality of it all. Like they even mentioned it in the Captain Marvel Empower episode as well, because early iterations of Captain Marvel in the comics, or even as she was Ms. Marvel even at the time, like she's wearing like these little black leotards. And when they were like, putting together the movie and everything, I can't remember if it was Brie Larson that was talking, or it might have even been like a costume designer. I honestly I watched them all like right at the same time, so it all is kind of blended together. So I'm sorry if I'm getting names
I
wrong,
think it was a
but
costume designer.
okay, thank you. But anyways, I just liked what they said about how like because they even showed like in the episode they showed the covers of the comics, and I like how
Mm-hmm.
they included that. And then they talked about how like it's not practical to be wearing something like that when you're flying through space. And so they're like, we wanted to make a costume that made sense, but
Mhm.
also like was different enough because I mean she's still a superhero and we want her to like stand out and everything, but it needs to still be like
Practical.
practical.
Well, to be
No,
honest,
Simple
it
the
and
needs to be
fast.
costume
sexy.
the costume that they used for her in the movie, and you're correct, her early iteration, the first was a blue and red and yellow costume similar to the male Captain Marvel, since her powers were derived from his basically. But
Mm,
she again had the entire bare midriff, and it was effectively a bikini that connected on the sides. Was her first costume. Her later costume
she's just wearing like a
as
black like
was a black
leotard with this.
bodysuit, thigh-high boots,
Yeah.
but in 2014, when Kelly Sue DeConnick took over when they were reintroducing the character and
Hmm.
updating her, and Kelly Sue DeConnick was the writer, Christopher Anka redesigned her costume to be more military looking because she was finally in the comics accepting the fact that she was taking on the mantle of Captain Marvel,
Yes.
and
Yes.
it was like everybody's like, you've earned it, you're finally taking the name. She's like, yeah, because it had taken her years in the comics to accept that was her role now. So she took the mantle, she made her uniform look reminiscent of the old Marvel, but also kind of like her own stamp on it. And
Mhm.
that is the basis of the costume that they used in the movie.
Well, and we can already see from the Flash trailer, not even the movie, but the neckbeards. I guess I shouldn't say that. The people who are already complaining that Supergirl is not wearing a skirt. It's just I get it. I get that she is normally portrayed wearing a skirt, but it's 2023. It's 20. Please let women wear pants. They can
Well,
save the world in pants. I get it's not the traditional.
And they can
I,
still
I
be
wish I remember
recognized as a woman even if they're not wearing a skirt. Like they can
what.
still be differentiated from, like because they're Superman and Superwoman and like they
And
could,
Supergirl.
yeah, and Supergirl, yeah, is what I
Well,
meant to say. But
one of
yeah,
the things that they did in DC Comics in the mid 2000s, um, they kind of made an in-comic reference to the fact that it's impractical to fight in a skirt for Supergirl. And one of the ways that they kind of came, and it was the artist who's like, I hate drawing certain scenes because based on the angles that we're telling the story that we were trying to write, it's not it's improper.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that they combated this in the storyline was they gave her effectively biker shorts underneath her skirt as a stepping stone. But
Mhm.
then the current version of Supergirl, they're actually doing an update by way of Action Comics. She has a pantsuit, not too dissimilar than the one she had in Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. So she has the entire Superman family is now wearing similarly themed pants and jackets,
hmm.
and then like an undertunic beneath it. But she has pants now. Um, Wonder Woman, they've kind of they have not said whether she's wearing a anything under her skirt in her current iteration of her costume, which, for those who don't know, looks very similar to this.
Hmm.
But it is impractical to draw these comics where, like, if you want to do you're fighting, they're kicking, you want to do a forward-facing picture,
You
uh,
can't.
you can't.
Yeah.
And it's not like if you put them in pants, they're not. It like takes away their sex appeal. They still have uh, their chest hanging out. Like, I mean,
Or
I
even or tight skinned
or
clothing.
tight
Yeah.
skin clothing. I mean, we still have Power Girl for heaven's sakes. So it just come on. I you know what? I'm here for it for women wanting to feel sexy. But I'm it's men writing these women in this way where it's more important to have the aesthetic that they want than it is to have the practicality of being able to fight.
And
That
they've just
is
revealed
disheartening.
they've just redone they've in the most recent issue of I think it was Action Comics, reintroduced Power Girl, and they make no bones about the fact that she's kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the super family. She never gets invited to all of the events that everyone else is.
That's because she
And
can't be around children in her costume. Anyways.
well, in her new costume, she also apparently they've redone her costume so that it is a bodysuit, a full pants bodysuit with a jacket, but her tunic does have the
The
window
traditional
again,
window.
but she does have a jacket that can close over it now.
Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't want to take away. Like I said, women can wear whatever they want. I don't want to take that away. But it does make a difference when it's a woman writing about being empowered by the way they dress compared to
A man,
men
and
writing
the
their
new
fantasy.
see Marguerite Sauvage is the one who's drawing it. I can't. I'm trying to see if I can find the writer of the current stories of using her, and I can't find the author right now. So I apologize for that. But it is a female artist who I think kind of said, "Hey, we need to change this up a bit for
Get it,
her."
girl.
Trying to think.
I'm
There was
excited to see how Supergirl does in The
The
Flash, which is
Flash.
another movie that I don't know when I'm gonna see.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
That's a
that's
different podcast, though.
that
Actually, you guys already did that
topic.
podcast.
On the Flash?
Wasn't
We
yeah,
we talked about we talked about it a
we
bit.
Oh,
did
Yeah.
oh yeah,
DC
you're
predictions.
talking.
So if
Yeah,
you want
that's
to go
right.
back a few episodes and listen to that, which had Robert and a couple other cool people on it, they touch on the Flash and they wouldn't let me be on it because I would have gone off. That's not true.
That's the exact reason we wouldn't let her be on it. So yes, she is right. That
I
is why.
politely excused myself from it because I
Oh my
didn't want
gosh.
to just yeah.
Yeah. I do need to dip back into Marvel for a second
Yeah.
because there's another female protagonist that we have not covered, and there's two aspects of this character that I think are very worthy, and that's
Oh.
Peggy Carter.
Oh, I
Mm.
thought you were going to
So,
say someone else.
who did you think I was going to go with?
She-Hulk.
I thought I have things about her as well,
We'll get into that. I want to talk about She-Hulk. So go ahead, go with Peggy.
but Peggy Carter, if you look at her in Captain America: First Avenger, she's part of the Strategic Reserve, and she's part of the project that is trying to determine who's going to become Captain America. And
Mhm.
looking at her as a woman in the military in the 40s, I think that Tommy Lee Jones's character, Colonel Phillips, I think that he did a good job in portraying the dislike that many men had for women in the military at that point, especially somebody who was in some level of authority, and that he kind of rankled at the fact that she had any say in this decision. And let alone the fact that she's choosing the scrawny guy as opposed to his toughest soldiers to be part of this project. And Peggy, throughout that movie and also throughout her series on ABC, Agent Carter,
I loved
showed
that.
herself to be a strong woman who kind of rankled under male supervision because the males always treated her as, I think that even in the first episode of her show, it's like, oh, so you're here to get coffee for us. And
Hmm.
she's like, no, I'm not. And proceeds to go and be, the complete badass that she was throughout that series. But we also have another version of Peggy that needs to be brought to mind, and that's the Captain Carter version of Peggy that we saw in What If, where Peggy becomes a super soldier instead of Steve, and she becomes, the I'm not sure if you ever call her the de facto leader of the What If Avengers, but she's very much take charge. She's a very much assertive presence, and it's what we would have seen from Steve in that role, but it's Peggy, and she owns it, perfectly. And I think that that was a really fun twist. In the character for Captain Carter was actually out of an X-Men derivative title, The Exiles, and that was where she first appeared as a what if version of Captain America, and she became a fan favorite, and that's how we got her in What If.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, and I like that we saw her briefly in Multiverse of Madness too,
Hmm.
and it was Haley Atwell, the same actress, who they got to come back and play. That was a
And
fun
she also did the
surprise.
voice for Captain Carter in
In What
the What
If?
If series.
Yes. Yep. I love Haley Atwell. Oh my gosh. I think she is a gem.
She is, but like, I think we should also, as you were mentioning, She-Hulk. We should get to
Hey,
her as well.
I was watching MPower
Hmm.
and I'm like, there's something missing here. Especially given like some of the more like recent like yeah, okay. I know they only featured really technically four main superheroes from Marvel, but and they kind of touched on a few others, but like there was like zero mention of She-Hulk. There was
Or
you saw her briefly. I can't remember which episode it was, but they like showed her super briefly, and you only saw like her legs. They didn't even show her face. They never like said her name. Like I thought that was really interesting, especially where her show just came out.
Which made me
I
wonder when did they actually conduct all the interviews and everything for the Empower series,
Yeah,
because it could have been as far back as last year, right after they wrapped with Miss Marvel.
that is true. That is I definitely thought about that as well, but I don't know. It just
or
felt like it was
She-Hulk was
missing.
canceled before they made these, so they didn't want to bring it. I mean, put her in the spotlight because they're not
Right.
doing any more of her character, which is a tragedy.
Well, and like I could also see too, like the four characters they did choose to feature, they had a little bit more like they were in several films or several iterations, and so they had like a little bit more to cover for each of these. Whereas She-Hulk just has her just one series, and they're not continuing with it. Whereas the other ones, I think we're gonna see more of these people in different lights, in different shows and everything. So maybe they kind of just had to narrow it down to the people that are still kind of active in the MCU per se. I don't know, but I given
And
like everything that happened in She-Hulk, and how that story was written. I feel like it could have fit in with MPower
No, it could
so
have, and it looks like
easily.
this from production notes I'm seeing here. This was 2021,
Oh,
so it does
Oh,
predate the series.
yeah.
even Ms. Marvel.
Well, it depends on. I think that Miss Marvel had been shot by that point. It would have been
Oh,
in post
it just wasn't really,
because
yeah.
they did a casting call for fans of Marvel Strong Women to be part of an upcoming unscripted Disney Plus documentary series entitled Superwomen of the MCU. But so this is June 2021 when the casting call went out. So you figure that they would have wrapped everything the fall of 2021, early 2022, right before Miss Marvel came
Oh,
out. So I can see then why She-Hulk might not have been added, but I think that it would have been a good add. I think we could have also seen other characters like Misty Knight, but they would then have
Oh,
to
yeah.
acknowledge the fact that the Netflix series existed, despite the fact that we're getting
Misty
Daredevil and
Knight?
Punisher. So Misty Knight was the detective seen in Luke Cage from the NYPD.
Oh, I didn't
Um,
finish Luke Cage.
well, I
Sorry.
guess we're done here.
Sorry, I'm
No, no,
sorry.
no. But the character Misty Knight, I mean,
Oh,
she is one of the oldest black female characters in the Marvel comic universe who's been around as more than just a secondary character. She actually predates Storm of the X-Men
Oh, wow.
in that by like a month or 2 months. So she was early 1975. Um,
I was
and
surprised.
Misty,
Sorry, continue
no,
on.
go ahead.
No, no, you. You.
But Misty has also been the lead or co-lead of at least three series, if I'm not mistaken, where she's gone from being a supporting character to having her own role as the head of Heroes for Hire after Luke Cage and Danny Rand stopped using that for their company. And then also there was a title that came out in shoot, I want to say it was 2012 or 2014 called Fearless Defenders, where she led a group of all female heroines in I think it was a 12 issue series before it got canceled. But, Misty Knight is another fine example of a strong female
hmm
protagonist. It was good to see her appear in the Netflix series. I would have loved to have seen them mention more like her or even Jessica Jones.
hmm
But
Mhm.
since those are kind of like multiverse characters that we don't talk about so much,
Right.
or even for one of my favorites, Melinda May from Agents of Shield.
Oh, yeah.
But then they would have to again, 'cause so
They
it's over
have
here.
to,
We did a thing, but
right.
we're just leaving it out
They
there
didn't
now.
even do Black Widow, though.
No,
Natasha Romanoff. So that's kind of interesting, too. But again, maybe it's just
Or her
because
sister, whatever.
yeah,
but we haven't had
Yelena.
enough. There's been enough of
Yelena.
Yelena yet to really to flesh out there. We got to see Yelena as a kid, then we got to see her as we got to see her in Hawkeye, but not a lot of
Hawkeye.
background with her, like what happened in the years between
hmm
when we saw her as a child and when she became a Black Widow or a full-fledged
Right.
Black Widow.
So even just like with Natasha Romanoff, like again, like her story is done as well. So maybe they just didn't want to focus on that, which is too bad because
True.
I think Scarlett Johansson being a part of like this documentary could have been a lot of fun.
Yeah. And let's face it, there's not a ton of women in the MCU, just generally speaking. I mean, you get Black Widow, you've got Scarlet Witch, you've got
Well, and we got all the ladies from Eternals too.
also
And
true,
they
but I
are making
mean, we don't
Eternals
talk
too.
about Eternals.
um,
I like Eternals. I enjoyed
I
Eternals. I
liked
thought it was
I like
fun.
Eternals too.
I want to see where the story is going, but I think that
Yeah.
it's still maybe a little bit too open ended at this point for them to say, look at what we've done, despite the fact that it was also the best representation that Marvel has done with women
hmm
in one thing. I mean, because you had, let's see, white, Asian, African American. You did not have a Pacific Islander woman character in this movie. You did not have a Native American, but you also had a deaf woman in a role, and
hmm
granted, it was a smaller role in this movie. And they could have done more, yes, but I think that their representation for that, having just actually since they just done Shang Chi before that, where they had a lot of Asian representation, and Michelle Yeoh again,
Hmm.
bringing her back in.
Oh,
She's
yeah.
been very hot right now.
Oh yeah, I forgot she was in Shang-Chi.
Yeah, and so we have that. So I can say that I can see where they might have been like, we've already got 10 characters we're introducing, plus a bad guy, other, plus two other people we've got to use further down the road. So like 13 characters you got to introduce over a 2.5 hour movie.
What's the next standalone Marvel movie coming out?
I believe it
Guardians of the
is Guardians.
Galaxy
What
Volume
about like single
2.
superhero movie?
Oh, so not a sequel, you mean?
Or yeah, not a ensemble, I guess.
It is.
What comes out later this year?
Let's see,
The
Moon Girl and
Marvels,
Devil
I guess,
Dinosaur is
is
already out.
Oh, the
yeah.
Marvels. The Marvels comes
But
out
The
in
Marvels, but I
November.
mean, do you consider that an ensemble?
well, it's just kind of interesting to me, and maybe the Marvels might prove me wrong with this one, but it just seems like their big characters are their Captain Americas, their Iron Man, their I mean even
They're
Ant-Man, even though
Trinity, basically.
yeah, they include they keep more of these female characters or these more diverse characters. I'm thinking like Falcon Winter Soldier, although there's supposed to be Falcon movie, correct?
That's supposed
It's
to
a
come out
Captain America
next year.
movie.
The
Captain America: New World Order.
New
But
World
they're
Order.
keeping some of more of these diverse, not as big as TV shows instead of making them mainstream movies. I mean, I'm thinking of Riri right now, which is
Mhm.
going
Oh
to be a
yeah.
TV show. I guess the Marvels again, I guess kind of proving me wrong, but I don't know if with the not great way that Miss Marvel was accepted. And I don't know if they're just even Black Widow. I don't think it was that big of a hit. So
Well,
I don't feel like
I think the
they're
problem
taking
with
as
Black
many risks
Widow. I'm sorry.
with
I
these
think the problem with
characters.
Black Widow was that they killed the character and then you got her
Yes.
backstory. They had all the time in the world to have told that backstory
Mm-hmm.
and then didn't, and then put it on Disney Plus, and they were like, it's over there if you want to see it. Which
Right.
is unfortunate because I thought that was a decent movie. I just think that the timing of that movie,
Mm-hmm.
especially after Endgame and after delaying it after Endgame at least once, didn't do it any good
No.
service.
They could have
So
easily released it before.
yeah, so there's that.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting to me. I will be Devil Dinosaur though, and Moon Girl is
It's delightful.
adorable. I
If
love
you have
it.
not watched it, it is so much fun. It is the smartest person in the MCU, and she's 13, and she
And
has a giant dinosaur
a
fighting partner.
giant dinosaur. It's
Oh my
so
gosh. Where
and
can
the
you
art
watch that?
It's on Disney Plus. I
Oh.
the
think
art
it's
style is great.
6 or 8 episodes,
Yeah.
Oh.
I
and
think
it's
yeah.
just fun. I've been watching it with my girls, and they have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it because I didn't take to the character immediately when she came out in comics. She's kind of grown on me over time, but I have I love the series. The animation style is fun. The writing is good and punchy, and she's a teenager, and they write her like a teenager. Now I'll give Marvel credit for some of their animation in depicting teenagers has been good. If you look at their Secret Warriors cartoon series that came out, it would have probably been during phase 2 or phase 3 of the MCU, and it's not MCU attached, but it's a bunch of, Shield is training junior superheroes at this point, and it's effectively the sidekick character. So it's Miss Marvel, Ghost Spider,
Mhm.
Squirrel Girl, Patriot, Inferno, and I'm missing the sixth one, and that bothers me. But they do eventually wind up meeting Shuri, and introducing her. They introduce Ironheart in one,
Oh, I love that.
and they're six. I think each of the seasons is only 6 episodes long, but they are complete story arcs within that season, and there's like through lines that carry over throughout the different seasons. But it's fun. It's light. I think those are rated. I want to say they're Y7, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
They may be Y14, so don't quote me on Y7. But I mean, they are. My girls watched them when they were like between 8 and 10, and there was nothing in there content wise that I was just like, you can't see this. So they're fun. So also, and you get to see um, strong female characters. Oh, America Chavez. She was the other
Oh
character
Oh, there we go.
yeah, we can't forget
in
about
Secret
her.
Warriors. And they were written as coming into their own. Not they weren't quite fully vested superheroes, so there's still a little bit of hesitation and deferring to adults, but they're coming into their own, and they're realizing we can do this, we are capable of this, both the male and the female characters. So I do recommend, if you can find Secret Warriors, which should probably be on Disney Plus as well, check that out too.
I'll also shoot out on that line. DC Superhero Girls is super fun.
Yes, yes. And if they ever have Shea Fontana back at FanX, please meet her. She is fantastic. We got to meet her a few years back, and my girls were also dressed up as Katana and Bumblebee from
Oh,
that.
I love Bumblebee
Oh,
so much. She's so
So it
cute.
was fun to get to meet her, and Shay was delightful with them when we went to go get some comics signed by her.
And also not for your children, but a great animated series, Harley Quinn.
Yes, definitely
oh
not
my
for your
gosh.
kids.
Yeah,
Not-
no.
and as much as I would love to keep talking about this, I feel like it might be time to wrap it up.
Indeed.
Should we all name one more of our favorite female leads as a way to end it?
Oh wow.
Are you talking
Yes.
about from Marvel or just
I
in
don't
general?
just anyone that we have not mentioned yet.
Can I name two?
I don't know. I
No.
can't think
Yes,
of
of
one.
course you can.
Okay,
I'll yeah.
I'm gonna go with Black Canary
I love Black Canary.
and Batgirl from DC. And Batgirl, actually, I might change that to Oracle, because I think the Oracle story is better than going from Batgirl to Oracle back to Batgirl. I like the way that they've handled Barbara pushing through the adversity and getting shot in the spine by the Joker in The Killing Joke, and her going, "I'm not done," and becoming the central point of data for the DC universe. For all the superheroes who have questions, this is who they go to. And she's like, I am useful to everybody here. And I think that, Oracle is a great example of that. Just because, you have a disability does not mean that you cannot be just as useful and vital to the world as a fully able-bodied person.
I love that.
I thought of one.
Hopefully one day we
She-Hulk.
get a Batgirl movie because I would love to see Barbara.
Yeah, definitely. Um, the person I thought of is Mary Jane Watson,
Hmm.
but not just any Mary Jane. The Mary Jane from the Marvel Spider-Man for the PlayStation, because we finally got to see a Mary Jane version that wasn't just Spider-Man's love interest who he has to go and save because Green Goblin plucked her off a building. So it showed a different side of Mary Jane where she is like an investigative journalist and she's capable and she like helps him and like to uncover like what's going on, and she's a partner with him, not just a like a sidekick or someone that just needs to be
Bless it,
saved.
Farley. You're going to make me have to name a third person now.
Who is it?
Lois Lane.
Yeah.
And I
Yep.
think that
Lois.
Lois in many forms has been shortchanged as just being Superman's girlfriend,
Right.
when she is not only a astonishingly capable reporter, although she is a horrible speller, but she is also an award-winning author as well. And she was fine before Superman came along, and I think that her notoriety went up because she was throwing herself off buildings to get a story. I think that one of the most interesting takes you can find on Lois Lane is in the 1986 Man of Steel #2, where Superman first meets. I'm sorry, where Lois is trying to get an interview with Superman after he appears in Metropolis, and all of the things that she does to get the story. And she's tenacious to say the least. But I think that even for mid '80s writing, I think that they did a great job of fleshing her out as dedicated to doing the job, getting it right, and coming back with the story. And I think that they've done a good job of writing her in what is the show called now? Superman and Lois on the CW.
Not Lois and Clark.
I'm going to be honest. I actually enjoyed Lois and Clark back in the day. I don't know that it's aged all that well.
Yeah, I watched it a little bit back in the day, but
I've tried watching a couple of episodes here and there. It's like, okay, it's a little dated. But for Superman and Lois, I mean, they've done a fantastic job, and Bitsy Tulloch does a great job of bringing that Lois to the screen.
Mine, for very briefly, I want to talk the Legend of Korra. I didn't watch Avatar till the pandemic, and now I love it. I want to get an Appa tattoo. They have such great characters, female and male characters, but they have really strong, great female characters in both Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra. And then just a little sneak peek for next week's episode as well. Bella Ramsey as Ellie in The Last of Us.
The HBO
Ellie
series
is such a strong, interesting, intense character. I am so jazzed for who they get to play and how they're going to do season 2 based off of part 2. And Abby and Ellie just Abby is such a strong, harsh character, and but they both bring such humanity. So yeah, Bella Ramsey brings such humanity to the character of Ellie. And that's been the biggest takeaway, that the scariest part of a zombie apocalypse are the people who are going to hurt you.
Yeah, for sure.
And the way that she's portrayed, such a broken person in the series has been, I feel like it's showing that they're going to be a great actor in this time. They've had so much depth in this character, and Ellie is such a complex character. So,
especially knowing what happens in the video game of part 2 and what's to come for how they showed her in the HBO series. Oh boy, I'm like already emotional thinking about it, because it's just so good. And it's just, like Steph said, we've had, like, on our Cutscenes and Cupcakes podcast, we have had so many conversations about Abby and Ellie. Like, it's so many. But we'll get into more of Ellie, yes, like Steph said, and she teased, next week when we do our recap of the Last of Us series from HBO. So yeah, I think this has been such a good discussion. I've learned a lot from both of you guys, honestly. So I'm glad that we got to discuss about these episodes, these MPower episodes, as well as just women in action films and different roles. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. What are you gonna say, Steph?
No, I was just gonna say we could talk about it for hours, probably. So
I think so.
There's so many cutoff somewhere.
There's so many different characters that, like, as we already kind of mentioned, there's so many different ones that were not even like touched on in these MPower. Maybe they'll make more episodes. I don't know. I could see them doing one on Kate Bishop at some point, like we don't know. So I hope they make more, because that would be a lot of fun just to keep going.
I would also be interested to see what some of the listeners and viewers think of for strong female protagonists. Who are some of the characters that they have through, whether it's television, film, games, stage even? Who are some of these strong female protagonists that speak to you, and what have they meant to you?
Yeah, definitely. You can find us on all the social media, Age of Geek. We're on Instagram and Facebook. And we also have a Discord that you are welcome to join.
Join us.
It's discord.ageofgeek.com. That'll take you right to the link, the invite, and it's all geeks are welcome. So
link in the show notes.
Yes, thanks everyone who listened to this episode all the way to the end. We really appreciate you, and we'll talk to you guys next time. So thanks. Bye.
This has been an Age of Geek media production.